Arranging can be hard work. Not only do you need to be quite comfortable with the instruments you're arranging for, what they can and can't do, and so on and so forth, but you also need to have some sort of creative vision with your arrangement. You know, is it going to be closest to the original? Is it going to be a whole new thing? There's a lot of stuff to consider. There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong. I think it's really important to go back to your old arrangements, think about what works and what doesn't work, and more importantly, why. So today I thought I'd go back and look at what I consider to be some of my worst arranging decisions of my career. Keep in mind that this doesn't necessarily mean that these arrangements are terrible, not by any stretch of the word. I did study composition before I started doing choral arranging, which means I did have a chance to avoid common problems like, say, bad voice leading. There's going to be more like certain bits of the arrangement really work against them or make them unnecessarily hard on the performers. So let's get started looking at what I consider to be some of the worst arranging decisions I've made. The first arrangement we're going to look at is Hey Ya by OutKast. Now, this is one of the first arrangements I did for LCV. And in fact, if you've sung in LCV, you've most definitely sung this arrangement because this is a very popular request by clients for gigs. I will say, if you've had to sing this, I'm very sorry, particularly if you're a bass or soprano, because this is one of my earliest arrangements and it really shows. In fact, this is even a revised version that I did. Like the first one was even worse. You can kind of tell, you can tell immediately that you're in for a spot of trouble when it starts like this. High Ds quietly, bass and tenor. Now this is, you'll see that this is a theme. This will be a theme in the arrangements that I bring up here, is that I probably chose the wrong key. And in this case, like starting early, starting really high in the basses like this and quiet, is that you're asking for trouble. It doesn't get much better later here when I've got the sopranos all the way up on top B flat. Now, you can say, oh, well, if you know your singers, then you'll know, oh yeah, they can do that, that's fine. The thing is, though, I really didn't know for this one. A lot of arrangers, when they do their first vocal arrangements, they'll be like, oh yeah, the sopranos, oh yeah, they go up to top C, and then I can write them up there. The problem is, yes, technically, but that's kind of their extended range. So really, for being an early arrangement especially, I really shouldn't have done this. Now, there is a recording of this arrangement, which I'll link to, and you can tell that it doesn't sound good. And this is not because of the singers. This is whenever there's a problem where it's too high, it's too low, you can't hear the basses, the subs are having trouble singing in key, that's generally not their fault. That's the arranger's fault. I really shouldn't have written this kind of intro. I want it to be cool, you know. I can kind of remember having the inspiration for this intro, and I will say that I think it is musically sound, but it's not been arranged well. If we go a bit further into the song, let's see, I kind of think everything's mostly okay. I think the tenors are probably like it's high and quiet, which I will generally advise people not to do. It is a slight struggle sometimes to sing this. It's not too bad. Like this is all fine. You know, I had an idea around with it. It's cool. It's this when you get into the chorus. And check this out. This is here as well. Oh, it's too low. Like you've got these people. You got the tenors up at high E. And, you know, everyone's singing loudly. And these guys are singing all the way down at like bottom E and Ds and stuff. Like the first version I did not have the octave here. I only did that as a quick fix. This doesn't work. Like, and you'll see that this is going to be the theme of Knut's bad arranging is it's not the right key. And so the problem is the sops end up too high, the basses end up too low. For this arrangement in general, I mean, that is basically the problem. You'll see most of it's fine. It's just stuff like that's not good, like this thing. But here, if what they say is, you listen to the recording, that it never cuts across because you've got these parts really high and they're singing all the way down here. It doesn't work. And again, that's not the singer's fault. That's my fault. I wrote this way and I shouldn't have done that. So yeah, check out the recording and just listen out how you can barely hear the basses for a lot of it. And that's not the bass's fault. I wrote them too low and I wrote the other parts too high. And it was because I chose the wrong key. I could probably have put this whole arrangement up a third and rewritten some parts and it would have sounded much better. But that's speaking, 5 years after the fact. So, I don't think I would have done that mistake today, but looking back now, that was a bad call on my part. Arrangement number 2, where I really wish I'd done things differently now, is Freedom by George Michael. And again, if you've been in LCV or you've seen LCV perform, most likely we perform this song because it's a very popular request by clients. But it's every time we sing it, it's a bit like, oh no, I don't want to sing Freedom. And it's because of the arrangement. It's because I did a bad job. And I know why I did what I did, but I can't really defend it from my current perspective. Because if you listen to the original, it is kind of, the backing parts are kind of in a belt range for a lot of the song. And, that's fine for the studio recording, and it's fine where, it's, that's what the singers do. In this song, you're singing from start to finish, and it is consistently high and belty, and you just get so tired. Like, you've got, first of all, tenors, boop, already, you start out high E, high F. This is kind of fine, in moderation. I don't think there's anything wrong with writing sections like this. Like, you got altos all the way up here on their kind of, B flat is kind of, you started to get into a belt note, and you've got a few sopranos that probably will dare to belt up here. That's not a problem in isolation, but it's like this the whole arrangement, and it's too long. Like this. So typically with a cappella music, you don't want it to be too long. You can have a 3-minute, 2.5 minute a cappella piece, and that's gonna feel enough. This one is like 5.5 minutes. It's so long, and it's like constant high belting, and it's relentless. Now, so I've kind of just copied the backing parts from the original here. That's fine. I will say that, okay, it's not too bad here. It's a bit later on. The basses have this, what even is this bass line? Like it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. They always had struggled with this bass line because they're singing very slightly differently rhythmically from the rest of the choir. And it was hard for them, and for very good reason. It just doesn't work. Had I done this now, I would have simplified things quite a lot for the basses. I think I was kind of trying to do what the track does, but it's just, it just didn't work in this case. Because if you have, especially stuff like this, so notice how all the upper parts are singing dotted quaver and then semiquaver. These guys are singing just 2 quavers. That's really hard. It's because essentially upper parts will be urging to push towards that quaver there, and the lower parts will be urging kind of towards that one. It's tricky. It's the sort of thing that I would advise to not do. Just simplify. I could have just had a very simple dum 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 dum, something like that. Would have worked perfectly. It would have been so much easier. I don't even know what I was thinking here. It's just, it doesn't work. It's not too bad in isolation. This is more like an overarching thing. It's too long, it's consistently high and belty, and you just get tired. And, you want to kind of, to reserve the big belty moments for, some parts of the song. Like you might do a few choruses that do it. But for the most part, you want to keep people in a mostly comfortable range just because they get tired. I could probably have cut down this arrangement to about 3.5 minutes easily. I could have cut out like the second verse. In fact, in practice, we ended up cutting out the second verse just because it's too long. And yeah, I don't think the problem is so much that the key is wrong here. It's just that I wrote the parts too high. I could have written them lower. You could just, move this chord down there and, it would have been a lot more easy. Like, I think you gotta be kind to your singers. If you're expecting them to do big belty moments, make sure that you balance that out with quieter moments so that they're allowed to relax, because having to work at the high range the whole time is exhausting. And I really wish I could have, rearranged bits of this arrangement to be to be a bit more forgiving for the parts. What's tricky is that once your singers are used to singing a certain arrangement, it's really hard for them to relearn a new arrangement. So even if I did a new one now, loads of them would, just out of muscle memory, just sing what they used to sing. So it's it's hard to change arrangements after the fact. So it's better that you catch these things before you do them. Like these days, I probably wouldn't have done it this way. Back then I did, and I'm sorry to everyone who's had to push their way through freedom for like the 30th time and they're tired, and it's just, I'm sorry. The third arrangement we're going to look at is King by Years and Years. And it's not bad, but there's definitely stuff I would have done differently had I arranged this song today. Now, this is an early arrangement. This is from 2015, the same year the song came out. And we did this for a film session, so you can check out the video. And of course, I'm lucky in that London Contemporary Voices is a really good choir, and so they do manage to make it sound good. But there's a lot of stuff I would have changed here. First of all, I decided to go with this like long 8-bar intro, and I have this like line from the original here, which is fine, but I really, same as with the previous one, you can shorten acapella arrangements a lot, and they're still going to be effective and good. And in this case, I really wish I'd just shortened this to a simple 4-bar intro. Just like have this here, maybe some sort of cadence going into the first verse, like all this extra stuff with this like counter melody, and it's dumb. If you listen to the video version, they actually cut away this, and I can totally see why. Like it's just people want to hear the song, they don't want to hear your intro, they don't want to listen to the stuff you invented, and they just want to hear the song. It's just a cover song. You don't have to be so precious and make it sound smart and great. Just make it go to the song. That's what people want to hear. Okay, this is again going to be one of those Knut chose the wrong key kind of arrangements. It's not too bad in the beginning. You can it's fine. This is nice for altos and tenors. It gets kind of high, but it's fine because everyone's in a fairly high range. Sopranos maybe a little too high, we could say, but the real problems start later. This is okay. I will say that I think this is just about pushing it for piano and tenors. It's kind of okay. Well, this is mostly fine. Like check out. It's just really high here, and for no good reason really. I again could have written this lower, but the real thing happens in the chorus. I used pretty much the same chorus arrangement every time here, which is fine, but it's so high in the sopranos. It's all the way up on top G, and you can hear in the recording you've got these great singers, and even they can't avoid this kind of almost screechy quality that you get for having them this high. It really wasn't the right call to put the melody in the sopranos here. I think having put it in the tenors even would have been better, just because that really high soprano sound is not very typical of pop music. If you had the same line down the octave in the tenors, that would sound a lot more like pop music. And again, this is not the singer's problem. This is me choosing to write something that's really quite high. I can see why I did it, because you get this really exciting bit. This really exciting bit where they're all, fairly high. But even still, like if I wanted that, then I would have put the basses up an octave, I would have had these guys, you know, on the C here maybe. Like, it's kind of, it just doesn't really work the way it should. And again here, look, like, boom, basses all the way down there. Consistently through this arrangement, you have sopranos too high and basses too low. And if you have this happening, it's a good indication that you've chosen the wrong key. And I think for this one, I really did. Like, here, check, what have I done here? Basses all, again, I split them as sort of a means to make sure that there's something there, but you really shouldn't have to do that. It's too low. It goes down to the E, F. This is MP. It's not the worst. It gets much worse when you get into the bridge. Like here. F, E, F. So low. And again, using the octaves just like as a plaster to solve choosing the wrong key. I don't think any of these arrangements are, you know, the worst. I just think there's stuff about them that make them unnecessarily hard, and stuff that really I now would have picked up on quicker. I would have been like, oh, this is looking bad because the basses are too low, sopranos are too high. Okay, it's the wrong key. And then you fix that, and you really should be thinking about these things. Because, yeah, as I said, you end up with a situation where the basses can't be heard, the sopranos are heard too much, and they're struggling because they're too high. Yeah, it's just, yeah. Okay, last one we're going to look at today, Holding Out for a Hero by Bonnie Tyler. Now, this isn't the worst. I think I probably chose the right key for this one. It's in quite a nice range for the soloist, mostly in an okay range for the backing part, but it is again one of these relentlessly high throughout kind of songs, and that's not good. And it's something you should watch out for. Having people sing high and loud is great in moderation, but in this case, I think it was high and loud for most of it. And I can see why I did that, because the original is a bit like that. It's really like Bonnie Tyler can like just barely sing it in tune because it really is kind of pushing above her range. But that's kind of what makes it exciting. But that's fine when you have a band who are, you know, going to be able to manage that. But this is a bunch of singers, you know, supporting, and for them it's also really high. So kind of it starts out fine, you know, it's not too bad. This is in a nice little range. This is where the danger area starts. And it's particularly, just because I'm singing the tenor part when we do this, it's a struggle because it goes so high. And even here, like you have altos up on an C sharp, which is a belting note. You know, it just, already it starts to get really high. And then you have them all up in their high notes there. Bs and altos, D sharps and tenors. And again, it's a thing where you have these great singers and you can tell that they're struggling a bit. Particularly this one, End of the Night, that up to that D, from that D sharp to that E, it always comes out a bit flat. And it's not the singer's fault. It's my fault. It's too much. I think I could easily have put all of these parts down one inversion, and it still would have been loud. It still would have been fine. And then maybe save this high stuff for maybe the last chorus, because it's like this every chorus. It's so high, and again, I can speak from the perspective of the tenors, where it's just it's too much. And also the fact that you're singing like an R vowel, which is the notorious like flat vowel going up a semitone, it's hard. And again, it's the sort of thing that you maybe don't think too much about until you've done this for a few years, where you're like, oh yeah, hang on, they're singing an R vowel, which is a semitone away, and you know, which is also the case for male singers. This is a typical like break area kind of note. So you got to be quite careful here. Yeah, and see here again, it's like, ooh, MP, but they're up on D sharp, E. It's too high and quiet. Don't do it. It's going to be a struggle. Your singers are going to struggle. They're going to feel bad because they're having trouble doing it. And the conductor's going to be annoyed because they can't do it. And it's not their fault. It's the arranger's fault. This should have been written down one inversion. It would have been so much easier. I think the problem is because we always have very little rehearsal time, I try to kind of keep things as similar as possible between sections because I think it's going to help reduce rehearsal time. But there is a problem to doing that when you then choose to put everything in a range that's really high. It's going to be relentless. It's just they're never going to get any chance to catch their breath because they're always out there singing their high bits, and it's it's just too much. Like I can see why I did it. I just think that it was not the right call. So yeah, if you've loads of LCV people would have sung this, festivals and stuff, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you've had to screech this out and pushing and it's too high and ugh. Don't write parts relentlessly high for the whole arrangement. It's a bad idea. And also, in this case, I think that the key was probably right because you have to think about the soloist, and for the soloist, it's in a good key. It's in a nice, belty key for a female singer. But you gotta be kind to your singers. Don't make them belt for like 5 minutes straight. It's not gonna sound good, and they're gonna get tired, and it's gonna be sad. That's it for today's episode. Leave me a comment if you have any questions or anything you want to say about the arrangements, whether you think that actually they sound great, which would be nice, but also if you have any bad arranging decisions you've made yourself, what did you learn from those? Also be sure to share this video with your friends if you think they'll find it useful, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next episode of Choir with Knut.